And I think the Real News, what I really like is at least it tries to engage us to really learn more about the issues that affect us.
I'm here with Mark Weisbrot, co-director of the Center for Economic and Policy Research in Washington. We'll be talking about maybe the end of the Monroe Doctrine, maybe the beginning of the Obama Doctrine, U.S. relations with Latin America in a new era. Mark, welcome to the Real News.
Thanks, it's great to be here.
Mark, can we say that in case Obama is elected, that will be sort of the end of the Monroe Doctrine and will be facing an Obama Doctrine, better relations between, on a more equal footing between the U.S. and Latin America, or this is pie in the sky?
Well, there are a lot of changes that have already taken place. I mean, the United States has lost enormous influence in Latin America over the past decade. In fact, I would say that most of Latin America is now more independent of the United States than Europe is, which is very different from anything you've seen in the last 150 years. So I think these trends will continue regardless of what Obama's explicit decisions are about foreign policy. The other thing is that the U.S. import market can't grow, is not going to grow. In fact, it may shrink for exports from Latin America. And so it doesn't have that kind of clout either that it used to have. And then you have also the just the political changes that have taken place. You have these left governments in, Venezuela, Bolivia, Ecuador, Argentina, Brazil, Nicaragua, Uruguay, Paraguay. All of these governments are different, and they've changed the equation. They've created new institutions. UNASUR, for example. The Bank of the South American integration has advanced, and in fact will advance more as this recession will show how dangerous it is to just tie your economy to the United States, because the hardest hit countries in the region are going to be Mexico, Central America, the Caribbean, all the countries with free trade agreements that are tied or so-called free trade agreements that are tied to the U.S. economy.
Give us a critical assessment. Do you think the Obama camp knows what's really going on, especially in South America? Venezuela, Bolivia, Paraguay, Ecuador, Brazil, Argentina.
Yeah, that's where I would say there is a big difference between Obama and some of his advisors, not necessarily the Latin America ones, but certainly Obama himself and some of his top advisors do see the world differently from the McCain camp.
For McCain, it's basically free trade agreement with Colombia, no?
Yeah, but also, there's a different sense of the world. If you look at the Washington foreign policy establishment, they're still mostly in denial of what's happened in Latin America. They realize the United States has lost influence there, but they see it as kind of a temporary thing due to the distractions in the Middle East. They don't see that these are structural changes that have taken place, that they've taken place because of a whole period, the worst really economic failure in modern Latin American history that's taken place over the last 30 years, which was engineered by the United States. So that's another reason why you had all these elections in these countries with voters going over the heads of the established political class and saying, we have to have different economic policies. So they don't see that.
And in the last debate, Obama's and McCain's position vis-a-vis Venezuela, they were indistinguishable, no? It was a sort of cheap demonization.
Yeah, although you see that a lot of Obama's positions in these debates are indistinguishable from McCain. And I wouldn't you can't read that much into that because this is a campaign. And Obama is going for certain voters. He's saying the things that he thinks are going to get him elected president.
Mark, you've just been back from Venezuela. Suppose you're talking to an undecided or independent swing voter in Florida, North Carolina, Ohio. You have 1 minute to explain Hugo Chavez and 10 years of Bolivarian revolution. What would you say?
Well, I would say, first of all, that most of what you've seen in the U.S. media is false and misleading. And that, Venezuela is a democracy. They've had tremendous improvements, especially in the last 5 years. The economy has grown more than 85% in real terms. It's huge. Unemployment has been cut by more than half. Poverty has been cut in half, and that's only counting cash income. People have health care there. Poor people have access to health care that never had it before. Vastly expanded access to education, especially higher education. So these are the reasons why Chavez is popular in the country. In fact, the latest poll showed him with an approval rating of 75%. And so those are the things we have to understand. And if he has a fight with President Bush and the Bush administration, it's not really of his own choosing. It's because our government supported a military coup against that government.
Coup.
Yeah, and has continued to pursue a policy of regime change against the democratically elected government there.
And Obama also said that regarding Colombia, and I quote, "Colombia has a right to strike terrorists who seek refuge across their borders." This is crazy because this is a preemptive Bush doctrine applied to South America.
Yes, and it was profoundly rejected by everyone in this hemisphere at the Organization of American States, except for the United States and Colombia.
And at the UNASUR meeting, the last one.
Yes, well, there too, although the last UNASUR meeting they decided to intervene in Bolivia on the side of the Bolivian government.
On the side of, exactly.
So,
on a legalistic side.
Yes. So, yeah, I think if you had a state with 27 electoral votes where all the people who believed that Elvis Presley was still alive were living, you would see a presidential debate about whether the king is still alive and how the media is covering it up and so on. This is the kind of surreal world that we live in when it comes to election year politics. And Latin America, it's all determined by South Florida.
So there won't be an Obama doctrine as you see it now?
Well, I don't think, no, I don't see Obama as being a transformational president in that sense, certainly not.
You don't agree with Colin Powell then?
Well, he might have been describing other senses in which he could be a transformational president, but I don't see him coming out and saying, we really have to change our entire policy towards Latin America. On the other hand, it may change because, again, all the historical forces that are described are going in that direction. You do have advisors in Obama's camp, influential ones, who recognize this reality, so they may just decide to accept it.
Do you see him revoking the embargo against Cuba?
Most of U.S. policy towards Latin America has not been focused on Cuba. It's been, and especially the hostility, has been focused primarily against Venezuela. The whole strategy of the Bush administration has been to try and isolate Venezuela from its neighbors, and it's backfired completely. In fact, what the United States has done through this strategy is succeeded in isolating itself. Venezuela has very stronger than ever relationships with all of almost all of South America. And I think you'll even see, I wouldn't be surprised to see Colombia and Peru, the ones that are closest to the U.S. in South America, joining the Bank of the South at a future date. And after all, they voted with all the other countries at UNASUR. They took the side of Bolivia and not the United States after Bolivia expelled the U.S. ambassador. So that was unanimous. And it included Colombia and Peru. So this is the way the region is moving.